Hello everybody. Um, this is quite a long video, so I'm going to start right now. I hope you are all doing well with your lives, with your lifestyle. I hope you enjoy living more and more. This life has been made to live, not to serve. If you want to serve or to work, it's good, but you need to enjoy it too. Um, any question, any comment that you may have, please let me know in the comments below. If you don't like this video, by all means dislike it. I would love to know about you in the comments. So let's begin. Definition of conflict. What is conflict? Let's begin. It can be defined as the situation which is created by the perception which has aroused between two individuals about a discrepancy and incompatibility in their actions and achievements, with the result of a tense reaction. Yes, imagine this. Two individuals. These two individuals can be people or can be countries, companies, people complaining about salaries, wages. That is the definition of conflict. It's a general definition. I've seen other videos in YouTube talking about this thing of conflict, but the trouble is that they don't go deeper into the thing. So my intention with this video is to go as deep as I can. So I hope you enjoy this long video, but useful in case you have any conflict in your life with your mate, with your family, in general. Let's move on. This perception can be precise or imprecise, but people in conflict feel that the gain of one is the loss of the other. Conflict is, as the title of the screen says, is a perception. What is a perception? For example, let's imagine that I go to a company. Let's imagine that I have trouble with my internet connection, and I go to complain to the company headquarters. I go there, and since the moment that I pass the door of the company, I've got customer attention. I have the doorman there, I've got the person attending me in the platform. So what is the perception that I have entering into the company? The perception of the client can be, oh, my perception of the attention that I received inside the company was that the people working there are very fast when they work. They are efficient because they resolve my trouble. The perception can be different from individual to another individual. For example, if the person is a man, the perception would be different from the woman and from the kid. Well, kids most of the time accept things. They don't perceive many of the things happening around them. So for some people, one thing can be good, for other people can be bad. That is the perception. You look at something, or you hear something, or you feel something, and you interpret what you see, what you hear, what you feel in your own words, based on your own upbringing, of your own knowledge. And that perception is different, completely different. Okay, let's move on. I have examples here. For example, one person says, I like listening to music. Okay, that's good, a good sentence. What about other person? Another person would say, I don't like listening to your music. You see, we have individual one who says, I like listening to music, and we have individual two, I don't like listening to your music. To your music. Because the perception is different. Let's say, for example, one person likes to listen to rock music. The other likes to listen classical music. We have a conflict there, a difference between two individuals. That is the trouble. That is the conflict. We want more money. This is a group of people. We want more money. This could be a family or a group of workers that are unhappy with the policies of the company. But what would be the company position? Would be, we are unable to give you more money. It's interesting because the workers are asking something fair to the company, and the company is telling also something fair. We are unable to give you more money. The first group says, we want more money because the money that we receive from the company is not good enough to have food, have electricity, have internet. I cannot pay my bills well with what I earned from the company. That's a valid reason. But what is the reason of the company? We are unable to give you more money because we have a pandemic, we have a pathogen going around, we have many things going around. That is why we cannot give you more money. We are unable to give you more money. So what would be one solution? We would be analyzing that in a moment. But imagine these two situations that we are talking here. We want peace and security. I believe all humans want peace and security. And the other person, the government, would say, so we are, but you threaten us. This example would be countries. All countries want peace and security, but others are not willing to say that they want peace and security, but with a condition. You threaten us. See? These are the typical examples that you have in conflict. The gain of one is the loss of the other. For example, the first example, I forgot to mention, I like listening to music. What would be the solution there? Person A saying, I like listening to music, and person B, I don't like listening to your music. We want more money. We are unable to give you more money. What would be the solution? We want peace and security. So we are, but you threaten us. For example, if you think clearly, I like listening to music, I don't like listening to your music, what would be the practical solution? Okay, if you disagree with each other about the music that you like, listen to your music wearing headphones. So, person B doesn't listen to the music of person A. So, that would be one solution. Second example, we want more money. We are unable to give you more money. Okay, the family A would need to pay the bills and not to spend in things that are not necessary. You need to control all your spending, because most of the time people say that they want more money because they are unable to give pleasure to themselves. And this is completely different from people that really are poor. This is completely different. I'm talking here about a average person, average company. So the company, we are unable to give you more money. What would be the solution? You have the comments to let me know. And the third example, the nations. We want peace and security, so we are, but you threaten us. How a country can threaten the other? By having more guns, weapons, nuclear technology, nuclear energy, all of that is threatening the other. Also, I hope you give me your comments. Let's move on. If we understand and recognize the conflict, it can stimulate the improvement and renewal of human relationships. It's interesting, this title, because the problem is the relationship that we have each other. We need to understand what is going on our heads, on our circumstances. Most of the time people don't recognize, they don't understand each other. Very bad. We need to stimulate that. I talk about this in a previous video that you can find in my channel about Messenger. What people hate most in Messenger. You can find it in my channel. You can subscribe to, and every week you would have this type of videos uploaded. Let's move on. Without conflict, people would rarely face and solve our problems. People is like the title says, conflict is like the title says, an opportunity to motivate improvement and renewal. It's a motivation. So we are required to take it like that. A relationship or organization without conflict is apathetic. Most people say that you really need conflict to have some interaction in your relationship. But what they don't realize is that conflict in a relationship can hurt the people, can damage the perception of each other. What we want is a life of happiness, of peace. Unfortunately, in the case of couples, a conflict is something that they cannot avoid. They would always have conflict in their relationship. Trouble about why you delay to answer, why you don't understand me, why you don't get what I mean when I tell you things, or my actions speak louder than than my sayings or something like that. In reality, we want life free of conflict, but that is something that cannot be obtained nowadays. Perhaps in the future, but not today. Suffering is seen everywhere, and many are those who respond to it compassionately. Firefighters, police officers, lawmakers, and rescue personnel strive to alleviate or prevent the suffering of others. Such efforts do much to help people on a personal level, but it is beyond the reach of any individual or organization to eliminate suffering earthwide. Firefighters try to, uh, as the name says, fight against the fire. That they can save your belongings, they can save your house, things like that. Police officers, their objective is to protect society, to keep order. Lawmakers, rescue personnel, all of them are here to prevent the sufferings of others, so we can have peace living with each other. But as we have seen, even though we have these people working for us, for the society itself, conflict is still there. Police officers, firefighters, etc., as it says here, they help in an individual level. But what about a collective way? We have a difference there. 1/4 of the world's population live in poverty. 1.3 thousand million survive on less than $3 a day. Imagine this. So they have a conflict not with each other, they have a conflict with life. To live in that situation with less money that most of us have, $3 a day. With $3 a day, in my personal case, in my family, with you can have just lunch with $3 a day. Just lunch. One meal a day. So for us, for my family, to live with just $3 is to have just lunch. Something unthinkable, really. But people living in poor countries have to face that situation every day. $3. The wages here, for example, is not $3, around $15 a day is the minimal salary here. So imagine that with $3 is different. But even though here earning $15 a day is not good enough to have a family. With $15 a day, it's enough just one single person. Enough for just one single person to have food, to have electricity, to have water, to have internet. $15 is just one single person survival. If you have a family, 1,000 million people are illiterate. 1.3 thousand millions lack access to safe drinking water, and 1,000 million go hungry daily. Imagine this statistic. I hope that in the coming years we have people knowing how to read, write, speak, and all of that because of technology like internet, YouTube, all of this technology that we have nowadays. Imagine this statistic. Let's move on. We are analyzing 7 points about conflict. In the whole video, we are now analyzing this. First, visions of the conflict. What are the visions? Is it good to have conflict? Is it bad? What are the visions of the conflict? Second, conflict levels. Conflict has a beginning, intermediate, and advanced level. It's like learning English that you have a beginner, basic, pre-intermediate, intermediate, pre-advanced, advanced level of English. We have the same, the conflict. We are analyzing that too. 3. Structure and elements of conflict, of the conflict. Oh yes, it's kind of a, you need to get into the structure, but it's good because you learn a lot. Next, fourth, styles of coping with conflict. This is interesting. Many people don't know how to deal with conflict. Don't know. They just do what they can. They don't have help. I'm not a professional about conflict. I'm just a human being, an average person, an average citizen analyzing this. I love doing this. Even though I'm not a professional, I can study it and share with people watching this video my views so they can do also their own investigation. Fifth, sources of conflict. What are the sources? What is the origin of the conflict? Can we avoid it? Sixth, dynamics of the conflict. Dynamics. And finally, 7, analysis of the conflict and elements involved. So we're analyzing these 7 points in this video. You can take note of them because we are going to analyze them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 points. Let's begin with the first one. Visions of the conflict. Many times we equate the difference of interest with destructive aspects. We associate conflict with violence, hostility, hatred, bitterness, and something bad that produces pain and damages relationships. Yeah, this is one vision of the conflict. Perhaps you agree, you disagree, it's your option. Is destructive? Not necessarily. But what I kind of agree is what says the last sentence. As something bad that produces pain and damages relationship? Yes. Especially when you have people that are resentful, that love retaliating, that really produce damages to the relationship. Not so big, but very little holes can also produce pain. And people talking behind, when you are not present face to face, when you turn your back to the other person, they start talking bad about you. that relationship is being damaged. So this is one definition. Other definition: the conflict is useful and can create positive situations and progress. Yeah, this is another vision of the conflict. Positive situations and progress. Well, we don't know the future, what is going to happen to us tomorrow, in an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. We are ignorant of the future. So to create positive situations and progress, depends how you see conflict. These two visions are always connected to perceptions, experiences, attitudes, and ideas about the culture and your development inside society. These two are the most common. The person sitting next to you or the person standing next to you would tell you these two visions, definitions of conflict. But we have still more to analyze. We have four visions of the conflict generally accepted, and they are, apart from the two that we have already seen, we have four more. Let's begin. A. Positive vision. B. Negative vision. C. Neutral vision of the conflict. D. Broad vision of the conflict. We have here the four generally accepted in a professional way, not in an average citizen way that you haven't studied, that you haven't done any research. If you are the typical neighbor that wakes up, gets up, showers, prepare breakfast, prepare lunch, go to the market, watch TV, work, I don't know, you have the two visions that we have seen in the previous presentation. But in a professional way, we have these four visions. You can take note too of these four. We are going to begin with the positive vision of the conflict. Yes, believe it or not, we have a positive vision of the conflict and a negative one. But let's see what's the positive about conflict. I put this image. It says, one small positive thought in the morning can change your whole day. Interesting, don't you think? When you ask a person, how is your work? And the person replies to you, better. I have a friend who is a subscriber. It's my best friend. It's one of my closest friends that I all the time ask her, how is your work? The answer I get all the time is better. I say, why she says better? And because she has this positive attitude, positive thoughts, that I never had it. To be honest with you, I never had this positive thought about my work. But it's good to have this positive thought in a way. Let's see. The positive vision of the conflict. Problems that remain hidden are brought to the surface and can then be addressed and resolved. Thus, the parties in conflict can deepen their mutual knowledge. Good. So this is the definition of the positive vision. You need we unfortunately we are unable to read the thoughts of our neighbor. We are unable to. Some people develop the ability to just see the attitude, the behavior, and several other things on a person, so they can realize, oh, she's sad, she's angry, she's disappointed, she's about to cry. Some people develop that, but the majority of us, we ignore to recognize that. The problems most of the time are hidden. So it is necessarily in a positive vision to tell your trouble to another person, so we can have an agreement between each other to find a solution. Most of the time, once the conflict is resolved, people will feel more compromised in the solution that will lead to get their achievements. You see, this is the positive vision of the conflict. Always to resolve your conflict in a positive way. Now, let's move on to the other vision of the conflict, which in this case is, we need to talk more about the positive vision. I have won. The battle is over at last. Look at this title. I have won. The battle is over at last. Those words express the feeling of triumph experienced by a person who has struggled against an undesirable habit and who has conquered it. We have undesirable habits like smoking. Smoking is not a good habit, but I am quite surprised that the response of the body of a smoker is different in each person. We have people smoking years after years, and they die, I don't know, when they are 70 or 80 years old, like an average person. There are people even to smoke one or two boxes of cigarettes, and they live their lives peacefully, apart from some coughing during the day. But it's interesting. The human body is so interesting, marvelous. Let's move on. Yet, how upsetting a relapse could be to such a person. How disappointing to discover that the bad habit, believed to be gone forever, has made a surprising and powerful return. Relapse are horrible. To have a relapse is such a horrible thing to experience. I tell you by experience, because as many of us, I had in the past a very bad habit, and I fought against it. And sometimes you have in your mind and in your body the need to go back to your habit. It's difficult, very much difficult, to have relapse in your process of conquering any habit. Anyway, perhaps you have had the experience of relapsing into a bad habit you very much wanted to overcome. If that is the case, you may begin to doubt your ability to abandon the unwanted practice permanently. Yes, as I told you before, I have experienced this. Mm, uh, Once I heard the experiment of a rat. I can share it with you. Perhaps you know the name, I don't know the name, but I clearly remember the example, the illustration they gave. It is a rat that intentionally doctors made them addicted to drug, to cocaine. The poor rat was addicted to cocaine. The poor rat didn't want to eat anything except to have the cocaine. The same as people nowadays addicted to drugs. The only food, breakfast, lunch, supper of that rat was the drug, the cocaine. So the doctors made an experiment. They prepared uh, like a paradise of rats. Let's say a paradise. That paradise, that place had grass. That place had grass, food, and all that you can imagine that a rat would enjoy. But they also prepare a special room in that paradise in which drug can be found. Cocaine was there. So doctors put 10 rats, healthy rats, in that paradise. Just 10 rats. And one of those rats were this drug addicted rat. So when this addicted rat had the same environment of these healthy rats, what happened? This rat was no longer attracted to have cocaine again. The poor rat got cured. So doctors came to the conclusion that the environment can make you change. The rat learned to have exercise, to have healthy food, to have the company of the other rats. Perhaps at the beginning the rat was like, oh, like tense, like, oh, I need to have this. But with the company of the healthy rats, it was something that the rat was able to bear. So I strongly believe that the same can be true about humans. It's an experiment. Must be done. Why not? Perhaps there is a study or an experience that I'm aware of. You can let me know in the comments anyway. Let's move on. Besides, the conflict situation can stimulate people to search new, better ways and methods of solving their conflicts. Stimulate, motivation. Motivation is so important. Motivation is good to study, to have good marks, to have a good job with your study, which is not always the case. You work because of your kids, because of your parents that may be old. Many ways in which motivation is a key word in human interaction. Okay, Let's move on. The conflict situation can help to recognize different point of views of others. This is so interesting. When you are at conflict, you are aware of what you need and what you want. What you need is something different from what you need, from what you want, sorry. We need to differentiate that. That situation can help you to see different point of others. As I said before, perception. For some people, that the tension is fast is something good. The tension is efficient, is good enough for them. So what is good? What is good depends on the person. We have different political parties around the world. We have political scientists. We have different lines of arguments, experiments. Ooh, there is such a variety of people, perceptions, opinions, upbringing, way of doing things. It's so complex. That's why the conflict situation can help you recognize that. Let's say this can be a great opportunity for people involved in the conflict, a great opportunity to get to know each other better. In the case of family, in the case of friends, can be too. Great opportunity to evolve, to be better, to know how to resolve conflict. Conflict can produce great changes, as they can be a great opportunity for growing. It's what I said before. You grow as a person when you learn how to deal with the differences between your neighbor and you. We are different. Every human, every individual is different from each other. Different upbringing, different all. Keep learning. Private and public institutions in several lands provide educational programs and literature on a wide range of topics. Take advantage of the new tools that we have nowadays. We have YouTube. In YouTube you can find videos about a wide variety of things that you may need in your life. Okay? Take advantage of that. Take advantage of internet. There are different web pages that can be useful for you with your troubles. If you go now to the search button, Google, you can type your trouble. It will maybe appear what you are looking for, or something that you may have forgotten. For example, I started in YouTube in 2005, watching videos. I was one of them. In 2005, YouTube was so much different from what is it now. In 2005, you really need to have the web, www.youtube.com, because if you type in on internet search engine, you type, oh, I want this, it never appears the YouTube page. Nowadays everything appears in the YouTube page, but in those days it was quite unusual to see what you were looking for in a video. You needed really to make good search. I haven't got enough training or enough advice to really exploit the internet in its early stages. Because if ever I had that training, that good advice from well-intentioned individuals, what would be my life nowadays? Completely different. But that's life. Let's move on. You are required to take advantage of them and educate yourself about basic ways to solve your conflicts. It's good. If you have a problem, nowadays, if you write in your web search engine, I have this trouble, what can I do? Or solution for this trouble, such trouble, all problems and conflicts can be resolved. Put that in your head. Always remember to keep an open mind and be willing to make simple adjustments. Not big adjustments, not simple adjustments. To keep an open mind is so interesting. There are people who are trained to always have a closed mind. We have religious closed-mindedness, political closed-mindedness. Don't be like that. Open your mind to new ideas, new people, new ways of thinking. You can have a surprise having an open mind. The good habits you learn and put into practice may well benefit your children and their children after them. Remember this, children learn from deeds, not so much from talking. You can speak, talk to your children, never have any effect unless you put it into practice. For example, there is a song, The Beastie Boys, You Have to Fight for Your Right to Party. I love that song, but in that song it says, don't smoke, but your hypocritic father smokes 2 packs a day. Or you tell your children, never tell a lie. But when someone knocks at your door and says, is your mother here in your house? And you go to your mother and your mother says, oh, tell them that I'm not in the house, that I'm working, or I'm out home. I've encountered many examples like that. So the advice is to be truthful always to your children. Now that I remember, I used to watch one cartoon named The Fairy Godparents. I don't know if you have watched that. We have a character there, Timmy Turner. That in one episode, their parents admit that they have lied to their child, and the child sadly said, "Why don't you feel bad lying to your child?" And the father says, "Yes, we do. But lying makes things easier for us." Even though it's a cartoon, gave me a lesson, and I felt bad, even though it's a cartoon. Let's move on. Additionally, when parents set a good example, their seed are likely to benefit and learn from them. Sorry that I made a grammar mistake there. Set a good example, their seed are likely to benefit and learn from them. As I said before. Let's move on. Ooh, We have one person banging at the door, the desk. What's this? This person is quite angry. What's this? Negative vision. We have arrived to the negative vision. Ooh. Conflict is associated to negative situations, quarrels, violence, war, destruction, even death. This is the negative vision of the conflict. We have seen so far the positive, now the negative. The worrying thing is especially true if the conflict lasts a long time or becomes too intense. Cash can also be significant in making the situation worse. All about money, like the film The Incredibles, the cartoon. Money, 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 money. Yes, money is significant in the relationships, especially when you have a long distance relationship. You really need money. That's the truth. To gather your loved one, you need money. Let's move on. Apart from the permanent tension, mistrust can also be added to the conflict. The negative emotions, such as rage, anxiety, or depression. There is a tension of individuals. Mistrust. It's so sad that you don't trust someone, especially when that person is a member of your family. For example, let's imagine this situation, and it had happened in my life, in my family, that a daughter tells to her mother, I'm having this, that, those, this trouble. And the daughter finishes the conversation saying this, please promise me never to tell what I have told you before to anyone, please. And the mother goes to the elder sister and tells everything. And when the daughter complains to the mother, I told you not to tell what I have told you with confidence to anyone. What have you done? And the mother replies, she's part of the family. She's your sister. So how can you imagine that I don't tell her the situation? She can help us to find a solution. But that is not what the daughter told to their mother. To her mother, she told, never tell anyone about this trouble. Not even to God. You need to tell. When a person tells you, don't tell to anyone. It's secret. The person is trusting in you. And you dare to do the opposite, causing mistrust in the relationship. In this case, in the family. So sad. So sad that children don't trust their parents. So sad. Several people may feel defeated and have low self-esteem. Yes, the conflict for the person that wins is all happiness, but for the person who loses can produce this low self-esteem. You feel like a loser. If conflict is taking place in the place of work, can destroy cooperation, teamwork, and affect motivation. Ooh, imagine if you have these three: no cooperation, no teamwork, no motivation. what is going to happen to that company? That company is going to go bankrupt. This is the negative vision of the conflict. But don't worry, still more. When genuine, it melts away the ice of suspicion. Truthfulness, trust. That is the best to melt away the ice of suspicion. Earlier in the video we talked about nations, that all nations in the world want peace and security. But what some of those nations said, we want peace and security, but we cannot trust you. You don't give me confidence because you have atomic bombs, nuclear power, and secret experiments, secret bases, and so forth. But listen to the title of this page. When genuine, it melts away the ice of suspicion. Truthfulness. If you really are truthful, honest to the other person, no more suspicion. You earn the trust of the other person. It's beautiful. I know. There is one Bible verse that says, and the truth shall make you free. Completely accurate. 100% agreeable sentence. It removes layers of prejudice accumulated through the years. When you are genuine, let's imagine with your wife or with your husband, when you are genuine, completely genuine, you have this. Removes prejudice. Interesting. It softens hearts frozen by disbelief and mistrust. Imagine the benefits of having a truthful relationship with your neighbor. Look at these three sentences that are in the presentation. It brings relief and joy to many. To describe someone as genuine is to give that one highest praise. The genuineness of a person or a thing usually is made apparent by test. Uncontrolled anger is harmful, both to the person who harbors it and to those around him. If you tell someone, oh, you are a genuine person, you're such a genuine person, that person is going to be so happy. You're going to make the day of that person. You're genuine. That person would understand that has overcome many difficulties to be such a truthful one. Let's move on. Is anger always wrong? No. Anger may be justified in some cases. Even in the case of God, he also felt anger. When the Israelites broke the agreement to worship only him and started to worship false gods, the Bible clearly teaches that Jehovah's anger blazed against them. Anger is when anger is moved by love, it's completely justified. You would see this in another video. You can write your comments below. We have one peaceful person from Asia. This person is from Asia, definitely the nose, just the nose. Neutral vision of the conflict. Neutral, impartial vision of the conflict. You may have guessed by the title what I'm talking about. In this vision, conflict is not positive nor negative. It just happens. Okay? No good nor bad. Just something that happens. The problem is not the conflict, rather the ways to deal with it. Okay, I have a trouble. You're not going to say to that person, okay, is your trouble good? Is your trouble bad? No. What you're going to do with that person is, okay, let's find a solution. That's the theory of the neutrality of the conflict. The vision of neutrality. Depending on the results, conflict can be defined as something positive or negative. The result defines the conflict, not the conflict in itself, the results of that conflict. It's interesting. These three visions of the conflict are so interesting to analyze. We have a broad road here. Broad vision of the conflict. The fourth one. Conflict contains the possibility of growth. If we handle the discrepancy well, or breaking, destroying, if we don't understand the situation. In reality, conflict in itself is not positive or negative. Rather, it is the way how we handle the conflict that really matters. It is going to be destructive if it is not solved and can increase into violence. It is going to be beneficial if allowed to analyze the differences and to act accordingly for a situation. While there are humans on Earth, conflicts will prevail. They are a necessary element of human interaction that stimulate creativity and development. It's interesting, the definition of the broad vision. I like the third paragraph. It is going to be destructive if it is not solved and can increase into violence. So it is not something that you can say, okay, I have a problem, so I put aside this trouble and I do my things normally, the normal way, my routine. I don't allow this conflict to interfere with my daily life. But if you save your trouble, okay, it is safe. You are not dealing with, but it's increasing and increasing. Deep inside you is increasing your trouble. While there are humans on Earth, conflicts will prevail. Is that really so? We have a person here. This person has a pill in the mouth. What is this about? Have you ever been seriously ill or gone through a serious operation? If you have, likely you now appreciate life even more. Do you believe conflict will prevail forever? This may seem realistic in view of the prevalence of conflicts. Man was created to enjoy good relationships with his neighbors, not to struggle with each other. I disagree with the broad vision of conflict because someday we will manage to resolve all our conflicts and we learn to avoid them. The broad vision of the conflict says, as long as humans are still inhabiting this planet, we will have problems. But what if one day we achieve peace and security? Nowadays, we have a war in Afghanistan and in Myanmar too. Do you believe that someday, no, sorry, we have Afghanistan, Myanmar, and Yemen. In the south of Saudi Arabia, we have a war too. We have 3 wars ongoing in the world. 3 wars. Do you believe those 3 wars are going to disappear? I do. One day, people living in those places would learn from each other, learn to accept the differences, learn to get to a point that they don't want any more war, just solutions. In the future, I believe that all of us would learn how to live peacefully and feel no longer fearful of our neighbor, but we will learn to trust each other. I believe that. I'm not an expert, I'm not a professional, I'm just another common citizen talking about this. And I've got reasons to believe this, even though it's science fiction. For example, have you ever watched the TV series Star Trek? Yeah, in Star Trek, we have a coexisting family, humanity. We have humans working together with aliens to explore the universe. No more conflict, no more trouble. They have learned not to learn war and not anymore. No more war. They just cooperate each other to reach a goal, to reach perfection. Those are my thoughts. Let's move on. 2. Conflict levels. Let's move on to the conflict. Personal or interpersonal conflict. Social conflict. Let's move on. In all human beings, there are different levels of internal conflict, which are manifested especially when the person has to make decisions. When these internal conflicts are not dealt adequately, can go up into other conflicts. Interesting. What I told you before, you can ignore that you have a trouble, but it continues to grow, to grow, to grow. You still stress about that trouble. Even though you do your routine every day, you have that problem, that conflict is still going around your head. Really, conflict also has to do with decisions. As I said before, conflict in many cases is the gain of one and the loss of the other. It's a decision that you made. Social conflict. This can be interpersonal, between two or more people, intergroup, between two or more groups, organizations, institutions, or within one of them, international, between two or more nations. We have three social conflicts. Three. A, B, C. Interpersonal, intergroup, international. Let's have a look. Social conflict at any of its three levels is the field of action of a specialist in conflict resolution. Let's focus on them. I always have lost in that game. Always. Interpersonal conflict. George and his roommate are barely talking. If ever they talk, they do it with sarcasm about the smelly socks in the floor. Additionally, the loud and distracting music played by both of them, but they have engaged in a silent hatred to each other. The more the silence prevails, the more George assumes that his partner is hostile, and the more hostile he feels in turn. What is going to be the consequence? Are they going to talk differently? Are they going to take different destinations and move? Or are they going to have a new understanding that can bring back the friendship? What do you think about this case? Is it common? Well, I have some friends that all the time tell me, hey, I don't feel like talking to you. And I ask, why? Nothing. That's that's the that is the answer I always get. Nothing happens. Everything is okay. But there is still conflict there. So the purpose of the person is just to help. Perhaps if you tell to the other person, of course you are not going to tell to anyone. Has to be perhaps a family member or your best friend. But you can tell to another person that you have the trust. Never isolate it. That's bad. If you isolate it, you are going to become selfish because you're isolated from others. So what is left for you? Just yourself. So you're going to act in a selfish way. Not good. Okay, you can take note of this experience and tell me what do you think is going to happen here. Oh, we have these two people. Intergroup conflict. B. The workers of a manufacturing company are on strike. Unhappy with low wages and minimal benefits, they insist they are not coming back to work unless they listen to their demands. The answer from the company is that Due to the fact they have been absent from work and low productivity, we are unable to satisfy your demands. Where the situation will lead them? Is the strike going to bankrupt the company and leave all workers unemployed? Or is it going to rebuild again the relationship between worker and boss, allowing an increase in productivity and gains for both of them? Somebody told me that in the past, in Japan, for example, if workers are unhappy with the company, what they do is not that they would rest, they would work double. They would work harder for the company. For example, if they work 8 hours, they would work, if they are on a strike, they would work, I don't know, 12 hours, 14 hours, to let the boss know that something is happening in the company. I believe that is an interesting way of dealing with this conflict. What this is what I have said at the beginning of the video. Remember the examples of the people complaining against the company? We want more money, but the word want is different from the word need. You want something, you need something different. So the company is going to tell you, okay, you want more money, but at the back they are going to tell to each other, this person doesn't need more money, he wants more money. Get what I mean? You can let me know in the comments too if you want. See, international conflicts. And this is the war. I've seen this image in 2003. There was a war between the United States and Iraq, I think. International conflict. The typical talk given in several languages worldwide by presidents and prime ministers says like this: the intentions of our country are completely pacifist, but we are conscious about the situation worldwide and the danger coming from other nations with their new weapons. Therefore, it will be irresponsible not to take adequate measures to increase our ability to defend ourselves against any attack. By doing it, we will protect our way of living and preserve peace. Almost all nations are declaring to be worried only for keeping peace but mistrusting of other nations. They arm themselves in self-defense. This is what is happening now. Nation going against nation in diplomatic differences and all of that. It's interesting that that it says here in the third paragraph, it says, by doing it, we will protect our way of living and preserve peace. What is the correct way of living? As a Christian, as a Muslim, as a Pentecostal, as a Mormon, as an atheist? What is the correct way of life? The way of life that they have in the United States, Canada, in Europe, Australia, New Zealand. What is the correct way of life? Are the people, for example, in Africa happy? in Latin America? Are they happy? Different situations to think about. What is the correct way of living of a society, of a country? To live under Bible regulations? Is that the correct way of doing things? To have the religious approach in dealing with crime, like for example in Muslim countries that they have public punishment, physical punishment to people who don't obey the laws of Quran. Is that the correct way of living? What is really the correct way of living? We have rich countries, Muslim countries, very rich, that they hire foreigners from Southeast Asian countries like Philippines, Malaysia, Indonesia. They bring them to their countries. They pay them, most of the time they pay good salaries to their employees. But why they are not hiring people from their own countries? Is it because they are superior people? Are they happy spending more time bringing foreigners to work to their homelands than to train the others to do the job that they don't want to do? Are those rich countries, Muslim countries, have prisons? If they do, how is life in the prison? Several questions to think about when analyzing this. Again, I read, therefore, it will be irresponsible not to take adequate measures to increase our ability to defend ourselves against any attack. By doing it, we will protect our way of living and preserve peace. For example, we have countries in the world that lack army. They don't have army. We have a country here in Central America. I don't know what's the name. Costa Rica, I think. They don't have army. They trust that their neighbors, which are very different in way of living, way of thinking, way of doing things, they are very different, but they trust that their neighbors are not going to attack them. That's why they don't have army. There are several other countries in the world, they don't have army. I know one or two countries that they even lack police officers. They don't have police officers. Why is that? Why some countries in the world don't have army and still others police officers? Why is that? And why, if they don't have army or police officers, why they are not being attacked by other nations, nearby nations? They are unprotected, they are vulnerable. They don't pose a threat. It is like all nations are pointing at each other with a gun and all have the trigger ready. But these countries that don't have army or police officers, they don't have any gun. Somebody must take the initiative. Okay, don't point at me and don't present any risks to me or my citizens. I'm doing it. I don't have any army. It's like that in the case of international conflict. Hmm? Uh, we have differences. For example, the government of Peru, a couple of years ago, had a difference with government of Chile about the ocean, which which is the correct border of the ocean, which part of the ocean belongs to Peru, which part of the ocean belongs to Chile. Both of them have a position. They said, okay, for me, this is the correct way of dividing the ocean for you and for me. And the other nation said, no, this is my perception. So what they did, they went to an international court, and the international court resolved the conflict. Mm. It's interesting that the United States, China, Russia, among other countries, they don't belong to any international court. They should be the example, but they don't belong to any international court. They belong to the United Nations. But in the United Nations, they are free to do whatever they want. Okay, I will talk about it in a next video. Perhaps I'm being imprecise in the point of view of some people. These are just my thoughts, my questions for you to consider as well. Common characteristics at all levels of social conflict. Common characteristics. They are common in all conflict levels. They can be interpersonal, intergroup, or international. Even well-intentional people can get trapped in mutual destructive behavior which they are not conscious about. Even well-intentioned people can get trapped. Well-intentioned. For example, I want to do someone a favor, but that person says, oh, that person wants something from me. I don't trust this person. You are well-intentioned, but the other person don't see it as goodwill that you have towards that person. Conflict is natural and inevitable. We are humans. As a consequence, we think, feel, act, have different principles, tastes, etc. Good. So conflict is something that you cannot avoid. Right now, in the 21st century, is something that you cannot escape from. You cannot skip going into conflict. Whether you have married your perfect mate or you have the perfect children, conflict is always going to be there. We have different perceptions, as I told you before. We feel, act, have different principles, tastes, etc. When two people are drawing near in order to interact, there is always going to be the big possibility of conflict. If you meet a new woman in your life, doesn't matter how well your intentions are, You are always going to have conflict with that woman. Always. Because as it is presented here, we think, feel, act, taste, and have different principles in life. Our upbringing is so different. Our decisions are different. That is why it's something inevitable. In a discrepancy, every path enters into competition, and the only search is for winning. It is such a tension that demands action, because not all the time you are going to win. It's not realistic to think like that. You need to always be aware that don't compete with each other. Try to just let things go. In all conflicts, there is the search of self-interest, as it is a natural tendency since we are born. Babies, what babies want. You can say babies are innocent. Yeah, but what is the tendency of babies? They are selfish. They all the time say, mine, mine, mine. This is mine, this is mine, this is mine. Children are like that. Babies, imagine adults. Positions. Positions are what each party raises, asks, or demands. They are the dis- they are the discrepancies that each one manifests. They are the answer each person gives to the following questions. What do you want? They assume interest, cover, and often inhibit understanding of the problem. Example: student, I deserve not to fail. I hope at least a C. Teacher, he deserves to fail. The maximum mark I can give is D. What do you want? That is the common question that everyone asks the other one. What do you want? If you are in conflict with your neighbor, with your spouse, with your mother, with your father, with your friend, you always ask this question: what do you want? Okay, what about the example that is given here? What would be your opinion? I tell you mine. I strongly disagree with this situation, especially the teacher. Firstly, the teacher has a measure of power over the student. Students are subjected to the goodwill of their teacher. Sorry, I made a mistake here. It is not that the student is at the same level of the teacher. They are completely different. The teacher has been trained to teach in a university, in a college. The student is like a white page, ready to be filled with the knowledge of the teacher. That's why the teacher has a measure of power over the student. I remember when I was at high school, I was one of the slowest students in the course. In the classroom, I was nicknamed Turtle because I was so slow learning, copying, writing, reading. All of my student activities were so slow. And the teacher, who had the power, first of all, the teacher had the favorite ones in the classroom. The favorite ones always participate always do their homework, always study. What about the whole classroom? Is the whole classroom learning? Is the whole classroom motivated? No, it's not motivated because we don't know what is happening inside that family, in the home. So if we don't have the slightest idea what is happening in that home, what can be done? So the whole classroom goes at the same pace with the teacher to motivate the students. In order to motivate the students, a certain degree of interest in each other should be displayed, which never happened in my case. I'm talking about around 20 years ago. I'm not talking about something that happened, I don't know, 5 years ago. No, 20 years ago. I don't know if education has changed since I left school, but that was the truth. The teacher was only concerned about the majority of the class is at pace with me, just this student or those two students are the problem. So the head teacher of the school said, okay, don't worry, they are lazy students, they are not interested, they are not motivated. So those are the excuses we can give to the parents of those students. Is that a correct way of thinking from the part of the head teacher and the teacher? Is really so? That's why I said I strongly disagree with this situation, because I have experienced that. And to my point of view, it's better that the teacher in itself is slow and the classroom in itself is very fast. That is the approach, because I have studied methodology, how to teach English. I have studied how to teach English, but my English is not as good as to teach the language. Well, I studied how to teach English in 2013. So 8 years have passed. Of course, after 8 years without reviewing the material, studying the material, you are going to forget. I finished studying how to teach English and I dedicate myself in other adventures, in other type of works. Anyway, I know this dilemma. Let's move on. Secondly, life of teachers are not miserable whether they fail the student or passing. They still have their salary. Thirdly, teachers must show empathy. Yeah, those are my 3 personal points about the example that I gave. To teach is not a job. Always remember that. If you teach something to someone, it's not something that you are going to is going to affect you. To teach something is an art, it's not a job. You do things to earn money. You work in a company as a housemaid, whatever. But to teach the students is another issue. It's an art. Schools here, like universities, college, are tax exempt. They don't pay taxes. Because here, in my country, I don't know other countries, to teach students is different from earning, or to have an income, to have money. No, you teach because it's a social service here. You know what I mean? You are contributing to the progress of the nation by educating others. So the consequence is good. Your taxes, you don't have to pay taxes, but teach my citizens. Religions too. Religions here are tax exempt. They don't pay taxes with the condition that they make citizens better. The teacher studies in a college, then they teach the students, and they believe, oh, I'm going to work. If you take it like a job to teach students, one or two of your students are going to be miserable in your classroom. Are you going to be happy? If you have a class of 25 students or 18 students and two of them are lazy, they don't study, does that make you a good teacher? A good teacher is the one that is able to involve the whole classroom into the learning process. Anyway, tell me your comments. Interests. They are the true positions reason. They are the needs, desires, fears, values that are not always set and remained hidden, but move people to embrace certain positions. Example: the student wants his effort to study to be recognized at home, and parents don't criticize him and keep paying the college. The teacher wants his students to learn that his job is taken seriously and they become professionals like him. What about this example? The student always is stressed about passing marks, not failing, to have a degree, to have college education. What about the teacher? The teacher is concerned about his profession, how they see him as a professional. But to do that, you need to be a good teacher, as I explained in the previous presentation. Okay, let's move on. Human needs are considered vital to survive. We have 6 different needs, and they are basic or human needs, security needs, need to belong, need for recognition, affective needs, need for self-realization. We have 6 needs, 6 needs in the human life. You can take note of these 6 needs that we have. When there are difficulties communicating and meeting those needs, frustration is created. I talked previously about this, that all the time I get the same answer again and again, all over again, all the time. When I say, what happened? Do you have any trouble? Nothing. Nothing to worry about. Nothing, that's all. Nothing. Frustration from the person that is willing to help is created. Frustration also from the person that is suffering because it's not getting any solution. Then other indirect reasons are sought to channel them, and they appear converted into positions. For example, I have a friend that all the time is bothered by the delay of my messages. What I mean is that I delay, I don't know, half an hour, 1 hour, or sometimes 2 hours to reply one message. So the person is not willing to say anything about the trouble. So that person is keeping the trouble to herself, the conflict to herself, and the person says, okay, I'm not going to bother about your delays of messages. I'm not going to care about anything about what you are doing or about what you do. I don't care. Just do whatever you want. But in the inside, resentment is formed. Something that should not be there. Resentment. Positions. A position is made. That is why I say that interest and needs are below positions. We can assist to discover the interest, asking the people in conflict why, what for, ask what they ask. Why, what for? Those are very interesting ways of dealing with the inability of the other person to tell your troubles. So you can go with these questions. Why? What for? You are in conflict with this person. Why? What for? Those are powerful questions. Many times we make the conflict a personal matter. There is a TV series called Dr. House. I don't know if you have seen it. That doctor never takes anything serious except the life of the patient. The relationship with other doctors, with patients, with relatives of the patients, never takes it seriously. But this series is to save lives. That's it. That is the objective. So, in conflict, never think that conflict is something that belongs just to you. Everyone has conflicts. Everyone in this planet. The thing is that you need to try to solve your trouble. That's it. You need to recognize that all your life until the day you die, you are going to have conflict. Or perhaps you are the lucky one who will witness the time when peace and security are achieved. Because that would take quite a lot of time. We tend to respond to the person rather the problem that separates us. If a person has a trouble with you, Or what I mean is, if you see that there is conflict with your relationship with another individual, don't focus on the person, because that person can be a victim also. For example, if I don't reply a message fast as you would expect that I should do, perhaps that person is not guilty of the delay of the message. Perhaps that person is a victim of other troubles behind it. Disorganization, a family problem, and many other reasons that the other person can find it as excuses. Not excuses. You see, that's the conflict. I'm not excusing myself. I'm just giving you the correct reason, and you tell me, no, this is not the correct. You are making excuses. It's not true. You are not interested in talking to me. Imagine that. We don't realize that the person is not wrong, but what is wrong is the situation that is not resolved. You need to tackle the conflict, the trouble, the problem. That is the thing that needs to be tackled, not the person. I strongly believe that all humans are victims. Victims of our own nature. Since we are children, we are tend to do what is bad. We never tend to do what is correct, what is good for us, what is good for other people. No, we tend to go to what is bad. That's why we are victims. In the case of, for example, homosexuality, gays, we all have female hormones and male hormones. So we have at least, all humans have at least the curiosity of people of the same sex. All of us have that curiosity. And some people canalize that curiosity into jokes, into, for example, to act like gay people, but in reality you are not, or they dance like gay. But we have that tendency on us, curiosity. Most of the people are able to control the homosexual desires, the homosexual wishes, but some are not. No trouble with that. I'm just giving you the fact. Let's move on. 3. Structure and elements of the conflict. Remember, I told you we have 7? We are still in 3. How long this video would be? In every conflict, there is a process that has 3 elements that affect each other and are constantly evolving. A. Conflict situation. B. Conflicting attitudes. C. Behavior. There is a process. There is not something like an overnight. I have this situation. I have this difference with the other person. No, we have different elements: conflict situation, conflict attitudes, behaviors. Conflict situation. It is the situation that has given rise to the conflict that exists between two or more parties in which they perceive that they have incompatible objectives. Oh, I need to drink water. I will go for it in a moment. They have incompatible objectives. Here we can identify elements to consider to carry out the conflict analysis. Okay, I go to drink water. Please wait. Okay, let's move on. The people involved, who can be primary or secondary, their objectives that are most of the times manifested in their positions, conflicting issues or problems, their interests, needs, and values. Those are the elements to consider to carry out the conflict analysis. To analyze the conflict, we need these four. You can take note of them. Let's move on. Conflicting attitudes. They are the physiological aspects that arise in the conflictive situation and in subsequent behaviors, and they are first the perception and second the emotions. Ooh, the perception again, I like this. Distorted perceptions of oneself and the other. Perceptions are cognitive functions that through the sensory filters of our senses determine that we see a situation in a certain way. I have explained already with an example, so you can take note of that. This is the professional approach of perceptions. Okay. Besides, it is the way we receive and interpret the situation. You receive. If someone talks to you or attends you, what can you interpret from that action? It is kind, it is bad, it is inappropriate. There are several situations in which you can receive and interpret a situation. We are different, so our perception of things is different too. When there is a discrepancy in the parties involved, a distorted perception of the situation appears that makes each of the parties see their own motives and actions as good as they perceive them, and those of the other party as bad. That is, each one perceives reality in a different way. Yes, I've been told many times, you are out of your mind. I've got a friend that always says, I'm not out, I am in my mind. I never heard that. That was the first time that I heard that someone is in her mind. Additionally, people involved are not conscious about all the above. You're not conscious about what is perception. Many people are not conscious. They are not being trained about perception. I used to work in a company, and that company provided services to another big company. The company that I worked with was a company of marketing. That marketing was made by telephone surveys. Telephone service to the client. And our presentation was like this. My name is so, and I'm calling you in representation of this company, on behalf of this company. And The objective of this telephone call is to learn from you the attention you receive from our workers. What is your perception? Many people have different views about the attention they receive. That is why I know a little about this concept about a perception. What is your perception? For example, I used to work also in a petrol station, and the administrator of that petrol station, of course, has his own office inside the petrol station, and in that petrol station he had several cameras. In that cameras he watched the activity of every one of the workers working there. So the administrator once told me, okay, you go and broom the whole petrol station. And I said, okay. But through the camera is not seeing very clearly the job that I am doing. And my boss once called me and said, what is wrong with you? You don't like to broom. You don't like to be seen brooming. What, are you afraid of the job? That they see you brooming? And I said, wait a minute, please, sir. With all due respect, that is your perception. It's not my perception. It's not other perception. It is your perception that I don't like it because you just saw it in the camera. And he said, oh, yes, you're right. He knew what I was talking about. He was a professional. He was the administrator. That is why I tell you I know a little bit about this concept of perceptions. And it's so connected with the conflict situation, with the conflict theory. People in conflict form distorted images of each other. Firstly, they attribute virtues to themselves and defects to each other. That is the perception. When I see myself, I see only the good. Most of the time when I see other people, I see just the bad, the ugly of the other person, which is again not correct, because you are not being neutral, you are not being impartial, you are being partial. And it's so sad, so bad to see people taking sides with the perception of others. So bad. Secondly, rational thinking becomes difficult and forced and premature judgments are likely. You really need to reason, to have empathy. As I said in the example of the teacher, it's so good to use empathy. Okay, what am I doing here in my house? Do I have privacy? Do I have my own room? Do I have time? What do you know about me, about what I bring in, about my lifestyle, about my family relationship? Do you know anything about me? And that is the question of the other person to me. Do I know that person sufficiently? Thirdly, both sides have a hard time appreciating how their own actions sustain the fear and anger of the other. It's really interesting to have this, to have insight. Do you know the meaning of the word insight? You can let me know below in the comments too. Insight. to see beyond what appears to your senses. You need to be careful of your actions toward the other person. For example, something funny for me can cause annoyance to the other person. So it is by no means correct. You need to think of the consequence of your actions. Additionally, people explain their behavior with the following words: I have to protect myself against my opponent. And the usual explanation is the following: she was greedy, he was disloyal. We have here a conversation of a couple. That she's greedy, he's disloyal, you need to protect yourself. Those are really selfish attitudes. And in order to resolve a conflict, you need to stop being selfish, to open your mind. There are several ways in which you can improve your dealing with the conflict situation. To conclude, most people involved in conflict don't realize that their counterpart is seeing them in the same way. You have an argument about me. I have an argument too. For example, if I tell you, I don't like this attitude of yours, and the other person is going to tell me, okay, I don't like this attitude of yours too. So who are you to tell me what to think, what to say, what to do? And I would reply to that person, but I'm doing it for your own right. Why you look at me? And start an argument, a discussion. Sometimes that discussion is going to be a violent in the way that it's going to be shots, insults, all of that. You need to use empathy. That's key in this situation. Example. Let's make an example. Student. The teacher hates me. He is very demanding, correcting my exams. Teacher. The student doesn't study enough. But again, oh my God. Sometimes we also find that while one of the parties is seriously affected by a problem, the other is not aware that it exists. For example, the example of the teacher and the student. Do you know what is going to happen if the student fails? First of all, you need to think how the student is going to react when you see at your student face to face, eye contact, and say, I'm sorry, you have failed. You haven't studied enough. What is going to be the reaction of the student? How about the self-esteem? Do you think the student is going to tell you, okay, teacher, thank you. I'm going to study more next time? Do you think the student is going to tell you like that? The student is going to be worried because the student has parents at home who is going to become violent to him because he has failed. So the student is politely telling you what you want to hear. In that case, the student is more intelligent than the teacher because the student is going to tell, okay, thank you. I'm going to do my best next time. So not to be embarrassed because the self-esteem is below the ground. The self-esteem of the student is really low. A fail mark is not something that teachers should give to the student unless they are so much rebellious. But in my own experience, students are not that much level of rebelliousness. And if a student becomes rebellious, it's because of two reasons: trouble at home, or the teacher is not as efficient as he may claim. But I studied to be a teacher, and based on my own experience as a student and as a teacher, it should not be failing marks. No. Uh, we have international exams that give you a failing mark, but that is completely different. International exams are not the same as primary, secondary, or university exams. Completely different. International exams or a degree exam is something that you pay for. So if you pay for your studies, if you are a teacher of adults, it is okay to fail the students. It is okay because they are already adults. They know how to handle the situation. But primary, secondary students, it's my thinking. Perhaps I'm wrong. Perhaps you have a different idea. Let me know in the comments. Negative emotions. 2. As a result of the negative and distorted thoughts that one has about the other, strong negative emotions arise, also a product of the conflictive history. Distorted thoughts. You assume something that is not true without having any proof. That is a distorted thought. And as a consequence of that distorted thought, you have strong negative emotions rising. As a consequence, anger, distrust, fear, sadness, anguish are experienced. And those really are negative emotions. Negative emotions that embitter your life. Your life becomes bitter with this. You really want to experience this because of just a distorted thought? These negative emotions can lead to uncontrolled and escalating conflict. We need to be careful as there is danger of violence. Yes, because if you have the distorted thoughts, negative emotions arise. Anger, distrust, all of these combined. Do you think it's going to end up well? Do you think it's going to have, oh, I have these feelings, I have this mistrust. Let's have a cup of coffee and discuss about it, shall we? No. Most of the time it's going to be violence there. Just because a thought, a distorted thought. We have to take into account that the emotional aspect, when it is very intense, prevents us from seeing the situation objectively, prevents effective communication, and make it difficult to reach agreements. Intense feelings, intense interaction with others can prevent us from effective communication. A lot to think about, don't you think? inconciliation. Interesting. It is important that each of the parties can be aware of the feelings of the other, as it may be that they ignore them. A certain empathy can be created between them. This is the solution. This is the exact solution. Empathy. To feel what I am feeling. To think what I am thinking. That is empathy. And it is a powerful weapon combined with others like truthfulness, interest, care about the other person, as I have discussed previously in this video. Example, a student. I am afraid of my parents' reaction, so they are no longer going to pay for my college. It makes me angry because I have made an effort to study. Teacher. It has bothered me that he addresses me in a disrespectful way. I am a respected and recognized professor. Yes, in this case, I agree with the teacher. Disrespectful way. So in this case, the teacher is right, the student is incorrect. Because nothing is justification to treat a person in a disrespectful way. Nothing. No justification whatsoever. So respect must be in top of the resolving of the conflicts. Okay, let's go. Behaviors. They are the styles with which each of the parties responds or faces the conflicting situation. They are: first, competitive. What do a competitive person do in conflict? We will do it my way. That is the competitive approach. The behavior, the competitive behavior. Second, the avoidant behavior. Let's not make a mountain out of a grain of sand. Look at this attitude, the avoidant attitude, the behavior, sorry. Let's see another behavior. Accommodating behavior. Sure, what you say. The fourth behavior is the distributor. You giving a little, so do I. Not for you, not for me. Interesting. And the final one, collaborator. My preference is, I'm also interested in knowing your point of view. So what of the following behaviors do you believe that you all the time have when you have a problem, a trouble, a conflict? What behavior do you have? You can make me know in the comments below. Okay, let's analyze. First, 4 styles of coping with conflicts. We are in 4, 3 more to go. Styles of coping with conflict. The results of the conflict are the product of the intentions of the participants, as well as the styles or behaviors that are used to resolve them. Clear. We all have a peculiar style with which we usually face the problematic situations that are presented to us. Nevertheless, we can also use other ways according to the characteristics of the conflict that is presented to us. You have your way, but as I told you before, always have an open mind to conflict. Open minds. Never close your mind to new suggestions, new theories, new ways of dealing with conflict. The most common styles of handling conflicts are the following. As I said before, first, the competitive, second, the avoidant, third, the accommodating, fourth, the distributor, fifth, the collaborator. First, competitive behavior. We will do it my way. In this behavior, we would see the strategy and the power source. Okay? What is the strategy of the competitive behavior? What is the strategy? The person uses power tactics to win and impose their point of view. The strategy consists of dissuading, persuading, being firm, defining, imposing actions and consequences, citing rules, insisting, repeating, controlling, being inaccessible. Look at the strategy, how detailed it is. That is why it's a competition. It's a competitive behavior. Competition between you and your partner, you and your neighbor, you and your company, between states. What's the behavior? Look how detailed it is. Dissuading, persuading, firm, defining, imposing, action, consequence, setting rules, insisting, repeating, controlling, being accessible. 11 elements in this strategy. 11. And by all means, please study these 11 elements of this strategy. They are 11. But you are being competitive. So by all means, study them. Investigate about them. Nowadays, we are in the era, in the 21st century, that all is accessible to us. And some people may think, may say, but what are your sources? What is the source of your video, of your presentations? Well, to put it this way, we have a search engine. Different companies have search engine. In your computer, in your tablet, in your mobile phone, you have a search engine. You can find all information available there. And all that I'm telling in this video can be found there too. I took my time to prepare it in the most basic way that you'll be able to understand it. And again, I repeat, I'm not a professional. I'm not specialized in this thing. It is something that I like to do, to investigate something and share my investigation to others. Okay, after the strategy, we have something interesting. The effectiveness. In this style, you win only by defeating your opponent. That is the effectiveness of this approach. If you are in this competitive behavior with your enemy, by all means use this. Your enemy, if you really want to defeat him, do it. Use these 11 elements of this strategy. You would conquer, you would win if you use this. What is the power source of this competitive behavior? The person feels in authority. This style can work when other forms of conflict management are ineffective. It also leads to speed up the process of solving the conflict. You feel in authority because you need to be competitive. Competitive people have a degree of authority. They want to rule. They want to be the champions. That's why. There are forms of conflict management that are ineffective, yes, because of a different number of factors. The person don't want to make necessary changes. The person just want to win, like that. Disadvantage. This management generates the frustration of the loser and causes dangerous resistance and loss of cooperation. This competitive behavior is useful only if you are facing a conflict with your enemy. But would you be competitive with your family members, with your spouse, with your children, your best friend? Would you be competitive with them? Look at the effectiveness of being competitive. You win only by defeating your opponent. You really want to defeat your family member? You really want to defeat your spouse, your children? Really? Are you serious? This is the first one, the competitive. The second one, avoidant. Let's not make a mountain of a grain of sand. Strategy, power source. What is the strategy of the avoidant behavior? The person tends to withdraw physically or mentally from the conflict. Additionally, ignores it and denies it. The strategy is to withdraw, to delay, divert attention, suppress personal emotions, and to be unapproachable. The avoidant. The avoidant ignores and denies the conflict. The avoidant behavior. To avoid. What does it mean to avoid something? That is the avoidant. But what about the effectiveness? It's effective when the conflict situation is not critical. It allows you to feel free and not engage in trivial topics or matters. Of course, when the situation is not serious, when you have a conflict that is not so much serious that it's going to have a tremendous impact in your life or in the life of others, use this avoidant approach. What about the power source? It lies in calm and silence, in not having to intervene, in being above everything. The disadvantages. Meanwhile, the conflictive situation remains unresolved and even increases. Nevertheless, the excessive use of this avoidance style leads to periodic outbursts of anger, isolation, accumulation of negative feelings, loss of responsibility. In this style, both parties lose. Like the example of the person that complains that you reply fast to the messages that that person sends to you. If we have the avoidant behavior, you and the other person would lose if you avoid talking about it. That is a behavior. We cannot change it. It is possible to change a behavior. Requires a lot of effort. Third, accommodating or pleasing. Sure, what you say, the strategy and the power source. What is the strategy of this accommodating or pleasing behavior? The person tends to adapt to the interests of the other. As a consequence, the person permanently accepts everything. The strategy consists of consenting, supporting, agreeing, convincing yourself that you are not important, to appease the other person, recognizing your own faults and mistakes. Interesting. How many we have here? Consenting, supporting, agreeing, convincing yourself that you are not important, to appease the other person, recognizing your own faults. We have 5 elements in the strategy. 5 elements. Again, do investigation about them, search for them on the internet. You would have interest results of doing that. What about the effectiveness? This style results when the most important thing for the person is to maintain the relationship and the conflict situation is minimal. Okay? Good. It is effective in that way. What is the power source? The source of power lies in getting the approval of others. When I was younger, I used to have that. A deep concern of having the approval of others. I'm still now sometimes have that, to be honest. Many people tell me it's not possible. In this life, you really cannot be friends with everybody. Some of them would hate your personality, your way of thinking, your way of doing things. Just some people. The majority of people would love you, but not all of them. And yes, I can tell people that I met before that really I want to have their approval. I have it for some time, but again, my way of doing things, my way of speaking, always interfere. Always. Let's see more. What about the disadvantages? Generally, the conflict doesn't disappear, but tends to remain indefinitely. The excessive use of this complacent style generates frustration, low self-esteem, resentment, and depression. It impedes the growth of personal talent and leads to a marked dependence on others. You see, this is the trouble. It remains, the trouble remains. And frustration, low self-esteem, resentment, and depression, because you are all the time pleasing the other person, all the time. You don't have a voice, you don't have an option, you don't have anything whatsoever. But look, I, the last one says, it impedes the growth of personal talent and leads to a marked dependence on others. The growth of personal talent. For example, I have a friend, his name's Rian, who said to me, if ever I win the lottery, I want a peaceful, calm life in the province. I don't want to go to the capital of the nation. And I said, why you want a peaceful life in the countryside? No, that is good for holidays, yes, but you are not all the time going on holidays. You have holidays, I don't know, 1 month, 2 months, but after that, you really need to go on work or to study. No remedy, no, no, no way that you can all the time have holidays. In order to develop as a person, you need to live in the capital of your country, unless you live in a rich country, like for example the United States, that you really don't have centralized government, but each of the 50 states has each of the 50 states have their own university, their own courts, their own colleges that are so good in each state. But what about uh, poor countries? Poor countries that all the power, all the good of the country is focused only in the capital city of the country. Sorry to say, but the development is there in the capital of the country. It's not in the province. In the province, you can go to holiday, to visit. And if you win the lottery, obviously, you need to move to the capital city. And if you want to relax, some holidays, go to the province. Anyway, it's another issue that I just remember. Fourth, distributor. You give in a little, so do I. Not for you, not for me. Strategy and effectiveness. We don't have power source in this behavior, distributor behavior. We have just the strategy, the effectiveness, and the disadvantage. No power source here. Strategy. The person agrees to act positively, assuming positions that are not fulfilled. The strategy is to A. Advocate moderation, B. Divide the difference, C. Give each one a bit, D. Meet halfway with the other party. Look at these 4 elements of the strategy. Good. Again, do your own research about them. What about the effectiveness of this distributor approach? This style is usually useful because it is relatively fast and provides ways out of stagnation. Most people understand as it promotes an atmosphere of reason and calm. Promotes an atmosphere. Sorry for the mistake there. Fast, because if you agree of losing something and your partner also something, of course, remember that in most of the conflict is the win of one and the loss of the other, on the other way around. But in this case, you're giving a little, so do I. Not for you, not for me. That is the effectiveness of this behavior, the distributor behavior, to deal with conflict. What are the disadvantages? Deep down, there may be little real commitment. Additionally, the excessive use of this style creates the possibility of reaching agreements without principles. There is a possibility of treating the symptoms and ignore the causes. The This approach is treating the symptoms, ignoring the causes. It's like, for example, the case of pimples in the face. Pimples in the face, till now, doctors cannot reach an agreement why you have pimples in the face. Some say, oh, you have pimples in the face because you eat a lot of fast food. But what about the very thin people, very thin people that have pimples? What about them? Many people who has pimples tend to treat the symptoms. To treat the pimples in the outside with creams, with soap, specialized creams, specialized soaps, but not treat why the pimples are appearing. Because once you treat the symptoms, I mean the pimples in the face, and your face is clean again, is there any guarantee that the pimples are not going to appear again? Of course they are going to appear again, because you are not treating the cause, you are treating the symptom. You need to treat the pimples in the outside, yes, but also in the inside. What is happening inside your face to reach the treatment of the pimples? By the way, when the first time that I have my first pimple was when I was 15. When I was 15, I had my first pimple. I am 35 now. I have still the marks of my pimples, which I don't really care. I am a man. I'm not metrosexual. No, I'm not metrosexual. I just wash my face and that's it. I don't put cream, I don't put anything. Fifth, collaborator or to cooperate. My preference is I am also interested in knowing your point of view. Look at this, interesting. Strategy, effectiveness. This also doesn't have any power source. Strategy. The person recognizes the interests, skills, intentions, and objectives of the other party, trying to understand it. There is a predisposition to reach agreements that satisfy both parties, even when both have something to lose. The parties see a productive experience in the conflict, since both can get benefits. Interesting, the strategy. Empathy. In the first strategy, the first one says the person recognizes the interest, skills, intention, and object. Empathy. Resume in just one word. Empathy. It's good. The strategy is good. Power source. The source of power lies in trust, good intentions, and creativity. Sorry if I say that this behavior, the collaborator, has no power source. It was in another place. Effectiveness. The benefit of this style is that mutual trust is achieved in relationships. Also, a high level of cooperation, creativity, and growth. Mutual trust. But I said before, if you are genuine, your trust is going to be regained if ever you lose it. to the other person. Disadvantages. However, the excessive use of this collaborative style can generate a waste of time and the abandonment of more important tasks. Interesting, isn't it? All of the behaviors that I presented to you so far have the disadvantage strategy effectiveness. Strategy effectiveness disadvantage. For you to compare which is more appropriate in your personal case. I'm not going to tell you apply this, apply that, because I'm not an expert, but I give you a general view of the behaviors, how to prepare a strategy, how effective it can be, and also you need to think about the disadvantage, if it is convenient for you to use it so far or not. Let's move on. Fifth, source of conflict. Two more. Conflict often arises from a diversity of sources or elements that often combine, interact with each other, and mutually influence each other to manifest. In our environment, there are some causes that more frequently generate difficulties, originating different types of conflict. What are the source? What is the source of conflict? Because we need to attack the source of the conflict, not the symptoms. What is the symptom of the conflict? Shouting, insulting. Those are the symptoms. But the source of the conflict. Let's move on. The facts. The conflict arises because each of the parties has a different perception of reality. That is, they perceive or capture the facts differently, and both believe they are right. These conflicts require teaching people to have empathy to understand their point of view. Perception. Again, perception. Perception is key in understanding the conflict. Perception. Because of your perception, you believe you are right. Because of my perception, I believe I am right. But my perception is different from yours, so I can be wrong, and you too. The key is the perception. And again, empathy is here present. Perception, empathy, truthfulness, several words that you may always remember about the subject of conflict. Okay? The resources. The conflict happens due to a disagreement on the lack of distribution of resources, possession, control, etc. The problem arises about who will get the greatest benefit on tangible assets such as space, money, territory, time, objects, distance, equipment, or human resources, and also on intangible resources such as power, status, image, etc. Help the parties to understand the external reasons behind the problem. Yes, this happens in my country. We have a high number of women that complain that the husband is not giving money to the baby that they have. That's why. For example, tangible assets such as space, money, territory, time. Remember that we talk about two people, groups of people, or countries. This is exactly the resources that they demand all the time. Okay? C. Basic human needs. Disagreements arises when one of the parties feel that their needs are not being met or respected, thereby impeding their development. These needs are food, clothing, shelter, and affection. Help the parties to understand the external reasons behind the problem. Yeah, the, the source of the conflict can be these basic human needs, or and you can have this into people, groups of people, not so much in international uh, involving two countries, not really, unless they are at war. Interesting. But we are analyzing. D. The values. The conflict is caused by differences in beliefs, principles, or criteria related to cultural, social, religious, racial, sexual, political, etc., which are not understood and are not taken into account or are rejected by the other party. Respect is required from the parties and is extremely difficult to solve. A conflict about cultural, social, religious, sexual, political, social, religious, sexual, and political. If you have a conflict of that source, oh, be prepared because it's extremely difficult to solve. So extreme. Yeah, respect is required. But to have that respect when you are in conflict due to the religious, racial, sexual, political, difficult. I would say almost impossible to solve. We have history, and history have taught us that when we have this kind of conflict, this source of conflict, we, we always have violence, war, difficult, difficult to solve, difficult to reach an agreement. E. The relationship. The conflict arises from the inappropriate style of interaction maintained by the parties, in which the perceptions of one regarding the other, the emotions, the communication between them are impaired. We should help the parties to become aware of the way they are related. Listen to this. Empathy. Just empathy would be the answer to this. The relationship. F. The structure. The conflict happens because of the way in which the structure within which the parties interact has been formed, which fosters inequality, lack of equity, oppression among them. In this conflict, the parties must become aware of the structure in which they operate in order to try to change it. Mm. Yes. For example, we have always families, and all the time the father has a preferred child, and the mother has another a favorite son or daughter. When they have that preference between children, that's a big problem. That's so dangerous because you create bad feelings among your children, inequality, lack of equality, oppression. Because let's imagine that I am the favorite of my mother, but what about if my mother goes out and only my father is in the house, and my father's favorite is in the house with me? Can you imagine what the situation would be? I'm talking about such a simple example as in my family. Of course, there are different examples that you can think of. Let me know in the comments. Let's move on. Oh, a toy. Does it mean communication difficulties? The source of conflict can be also a communication difficulty. They interfere and prevent information from being transmitted clearly between the parties. This may be due to a lack of information, wrong information, or distortion of information due to misunderstandings, mistakes, etc. To solve these conflicts, it is necessary to improve the levels of communications and interpretation of the information that is handled, available. Good. So, no need for explanation. It's here. You can take note if you want. 6. Dynamics of the conflict. The conflict process is like a spiral that follows certain typical changes and stages that depend on the way the parties behave in the different phases of this process. To begin with, the actions of the parties are those that determine the course that the conflict situation will follow. It can escalate or not. Besides, we are required to understand that this process is dynamic. That is, the movements made by one of the parties will affect the subsequent movements of the other, which in turn will affect the first, and so on. To conclude, the size, intensity, and frequency of social conflict depend on the management carried out by the parties in different stages and prevention. Good. Anything to say here? It's clear. All stages of conflict. Most conflicts arise from different sources of conflict. Generally, these are combined to give rise to the next step. They are latency, formation of the conflict, beginning, manifestation of the conflict, answer, finally, consequences, result of the conflict. First, latency, two, beginning, third, answer, fourth, consequences. Start. Formation of the conflict. The conditions for its appearance are being given. The conflict is forming and it's latent. It is in the minds of the parties or in one of them, but has not yet been externalized. It's like the resentment that you have there. The resentment is starting to be formed. In this first stage, work must be done in the field of prevention to reverse and change the conditions that are causing the appearance of the conflict. Yeah, it's better to prevent than to weep. If you feel that you have this resentment inside you, try to, little by little, try to prevent from getting higher, higher, and higher. Oh, runners. Beginning, manifestation of the conflict. The conflict appears due to the occurrence of a precipitating or triggering event that makes the opposition between the parties evident. The discrepancy begins. It has been made manifest in an open way. Something has happened that a retaliating is being manifested to the other person. Really, but something really must happen before you externalize that problem that you have, that conflict. Something first must happen. Let's proceed. At the beginning of the conflict, people feel that they have a problem and make an effort to solve it. It's good to deal with these troubles at the beginning, not that when the conflict has escalated into violence, into mistrust, all of that. Most of the time, it is possible to harmonize these differences. When you tackle these differences, as the title says, at the beginning, like the runners at the beginning are running with the gun, when the person triggers it and it start running. Yeah, before the conflict starts running, you need to tackle it to prevent from advancing. That's why I put that picture there. Answer: if the people involved cannot harmonize their differences, the tension begins to grow. The other is blamed. They begin to see their defects and personalize the problem. It's interesting what it says here, personalize the problem. Interesting. One person refuses to listen to the other's argument and their emotions too. They start to focus on themselves. You need to wonder why you are seeing the defects of the other person, why you are not seeing your own defects, why you believe that you are the one perfect, not the other person. If you believe you are perfect, you need to also assume that the other person is perfect. But that is not the case. The case is that you are not perfect. You commit mistakes. So if you commit mistakes, the other person also commit mistakes. Why you need to see the defects in the other? And I don't like this. One person refuses to listen. If a person really refuses to listen, so what effect, what consequence would we have if that happens? Not really a good situation. You need to listen. You need to learn to listen to the other person's argument. It is a win-win scenario. Why I say win-win? Because if you listen, perhaps you would realize, oh, I've been wrong all the time. But it's never too late to change. So you would realize that and you would make the necessary changes if you are willing to listen. If you have an open mind, as I told you at the beginning, you would resolve your trouble. But if you are correct and you listen to it, you would be convinced that you are correct and the other person is wrong. You get what I mean now? The parties involved, faced with the manifest conflict, may adopt some of the behaviors that we have already studied previously. To avoid, they can evade it and pretend that it does not exist. To give in to the request of the other party so as not to face major problems. To compete, to openly confront the other party and try to win and impose your point of view. To settle, to agree to resolve it by reciprocally yielding both parties. To collaborate, to work together to confront it and find a solution. When people or groups with competitive behavior face each other, the dynamics that follow the conflict entails an increasing tension between the parties. Each one fixes more on their position and they become more rigid. More accusations are added, interaction becomes rigid and aggressions increase. The competitive behavior should not exist because it's the reason why conflict appears. For example, you may say, oh, but you are wrong. Competitive behavior, you have it in sports, you have it in jobs, you have it in studies. You know, that is why we have low self among human beings, because we have the competition. We don't realize that we are equal. If we play football, it is not because we want to win, it's because we want to entertain ourselves. Doesn't matter who wins, it's a play. The same with any other sport. But society, since the Greeks, have made it a competition, which is not good because we have the competitive system. And all the time in the competitions we have people complaining, people cheating. Yes, people cheating in the competitions to win a single cup. Not good. Not good, the competitive behavior. No, I'm completely against it. Third parties are involved in each of the parties who are always biased with those who seek them, contributed to widening the gap that separates them. Most of the time, people who join the discussion or the conflict situation, they are not neutral. They tend to take sides with one or the other person. They are never neutral. We need to be careful with that. In these circumstances, communication breaks down, the other is hardly heard, they stop talking to each other, the violence is imminent. You see, just because the competitive behavior, you have all of this. How many times we have seen in football competitions this violence? In the football ground, we have that. Not just there. Well, talking about football, many of you come from different countries, like Asian countries, uh, Asian countries, yeah. But you know something? The most popular sport worldwide. You may be thinking, oh, the most popular is basketball. Wrong. The most popular sport worldwide is football. We have the World Cup FIFA every 4 years. That World Cup is the most broadcast in TV, on internet, everywhere. Really is worldwide. Every nation of this earth competes in the FIFA World Cup. Okay? So Asians always lose that. Always. I have never an Asian country has really light in those competitions. No, never. Not Africans, just Europeans and American countries. Don't get me wrong, African countries are so good playing football. So good. They never won the cup. They never won the cup. So just to let you know. And the next worldwide FIFA Cup that we would have is in next year, 2022, World Cup in Qatar. In Qatar, imagine. There are several things going around in that World Cup, but to be in detail in that, I need to prepare. Let's move on with this. 4. Consequences. Results of the conflict. Faced with the behaviors of the parties, that is, with the responses or non-responses, the conflict may evolve as follows. Suppress. It can become less manifest for some time. Escalate. It can tend to become more intense and evolve towards greater forms of violence. De-escalate. It may tend to decrease in intensity. Stagnate, when the parties harden in their position and both perceive that they can achieve to resolve with the will and collaboration of the parties. Good. B. Conflict prevention. Currently, there are conflict resolution techniques with which we can intervene, preferably in the early stages of the conflict, taking into account the size, intensity, and frequency. Good. On the dynamics that are established between them from the beginning so that those involved can transfer the negative into positive expressions and find a solution to their controversies. Modern conflict resolution approaches emphasizes the importance of conflict prevention, reinforcing the capacity for dialogue of the people or groups involved in the dispute and creating adequate conditions to manage social conflict. In the early stages, yes, as I told you before, it's better to tackle the trouble in the early stages because it's not going to climb up to violence, to climb up to taking your case to court. No. In the early stages is good. Good. Okay. 7. Analysis of the conflict and elements involved. When encountering conflicts between people or groups of people, they can seem complex and confusing. To intervene successfully, we need to carry out a conflict analysis to have clarity and understanding of the problem situation. The elements of the conflict studied previously, such as the conflicting situation, the conflicting attitudes of the parties, and the behaviors they present, help us to carry out the conflict analysis. The conflict analysis techniques take into account the following: A. People, B. The process, C. The problem. Let's analyze them. A. People. We identify the groups and people involved. For example, primary parties, the people directly involved. Secondary parties, the people behind and who have influence. Third parties, the mediators. These are the groups involved. For example, I have a difference with my sister, let's say, which would be the secondary parties, the rest of the family. And who would be the mediators? Would be the parents. You see? Perhaps you have another example. Let me know in the comments if ever. We try to understand the perception that each of the parties have of the problem, how they perceive the problem and how they describe it, how has it affected them, what are their positions, how can they rethink the problem to improve perception. Look at this perception again. You need to think, you need to ask the people involved about their perception. What is wrong, what is right for them, what is good, what is bad, what is fast, what is slow, what is excellent, what is not excellent, poor quality, high quality. You need to ask, how has it affected you? How? In which sense has it affected? What are their positions? Are they against? Are they for? Disadvantages, advantages? How can they rethink the problem to improve perception? Rethink, to change the perception of the problem. To change the perception. For example, I have my position towards a trouble and I cannot think of a solution. But what about if I ask my father or my mother to the solution of it? Perhaps they have a key, a clue to understand the problem in a different perspective, different angle, different point of view. You may say, or you can go to a psychologist or a therapist. If you are rich and you have money, okay, you can do it. But the psychologist, well, I'm going to talk about psychology in a future video, but think about this. The psychologists, are they cheap or expensive? They are just advisors. They exactly, they can tell you all of what I'm telling you right now so far. Anyway, let's move. B, process. We describe the dynamics of the conflict, how the conflict started, what actions have increased the conflict, what has been done to face the conflict, what actions, for example, to tell who is aware of the conflict situation, who is aware of it, what has been done to face the conflict, what have you do. Let's describe and analyze how communication happens between the parties. Who speaks to whom, when, how much, and why. When is the time that you communicate with the other person? When was the time? When was the first time that you talk about it? When was the last time? Do you have an special appointed time to talk about it? Do you talk about it so often? Several questions that you need to ask about it. In what way communication be better? Let's finish the video with the problem. We need to describe the heart of the conflict. What is the reason or cause of the conflicts? What are the needs and interests of each one? Are they reasonable interests? We make a list of the problems to be solved. We look for and analyze the resources that can regulate the difference that exists between the parties. What are the common needs and interests? What proposals are the parties willing to make? Okay, you can take note of this presentation, and I am so glad that you stayed this long to me. To my favorite subscriber that always comment to my videos, my friend Rian, my best friend. Thank you so much for going this far, and thank you for the patience. Thank you for everything, and see you next time, all of you. Greetings. Have a nice day. Bye.